Guys, welcome to another video. Today we're taking a look at Marvel Milestone Edition Amazing Fantasy issue 15 that came out in 1992. This came out to mark the 30th anniversary of Spider-Man debuting in Amazing Fantasy issue 50, which came out originally in 1962. And I am so glad to have this with me in hand because this is the closest I will get to having an original in my hand for a very long time, regardless of whatever grade it is. This is actually like a proper facsimile. Well, not a proper facsimile, because there is some color grading, and I will show that to you later as we go on and take a detailed look into the pages. But there is some color grading in this here that is not the same as it was in the original issue in 1962, but it does have all the original ads that were there in 1962, and it also has all the other extra stories that were there in the original issue in this here. But obviously the difference is it comes with this gray border here in all the pages, which was not there in the original. And if you don't want this gray border and you want the original colors, then you can go for the True Believers, but that does not have all the extra stories that this one has, which was there in the original issue. If you want like a proper facsimile, then yeah, you can go for the facsimile, but that's going to be a tad bit expensive compared to this and the True Believers. So guys, until a few days ago, this was the book I had for a very long time, which is the Amazing Spider-Man Marvel Masterworks, which collected the first 10 issues of the Amazing Spider-Man, including the Amazing Fantasy 15. This came out in 2012, and I have read this book countless times with the first 10 original stories and the Amazing Fantasy 15. And to see that now I finally have a single issue copy in my hand, it is just so awesome. I hope like this one day I get to have the original issue with me as well. Now guys, obviously you know that Spider-Man was born by the vision of Stan Lee and by the artwork of Steve Ditko, but interestingly enough, this cover that you see here was not done by Steve Ditko. This was done by Jack Kirby. So actually there was a different cover that Steve Ditko drew for Amazing Fantasy 15, which is a similar pose but from a different angle. I'll put up the image here so you can see it. But for whatever reason, Stanley was not completely convinced with that cover art, and then he went to Jack Kirby, who gave us this issue, which is now the forever sealed in the history of Spider-Man to be the most iconic cover of all time. You would have seen numerous homages, numerous variants, and numerous reprintings of this very cover. So we have the issue here outside the cover. So this is taking a look at front and the back. This is the original ad. As you can see, it's mentioned here, facsimile advertisement no longer valid. But yeah, this was the old ads that was there in the original Amazing Fantasy issue number 15. And a lot of you would have seen the story of how Spider-Man came to creation, where actually this was the last issue of the Amazing Fantasy run, and at that time Stan Lee pitched the idea of Spider-Man, but his superiors didn't like it. They said you can't have a teenager as a superhero, giving him realistic problems and making a spider-based hero. It's just so against the standards. It was unconventional, because up until that time teenagers were supposed to be only sidekicks. Like probably mainly you would have seen it in Batman and Robin, where Batman was a grown man, Robin was a teenager who could probably be the future, but he's definitely not going to be the main hero. So Spider-Man was an unconventional hero that went against the norms that was there then and there. So Stanley was always a visionary. I mean, the heroes that he came up back then in the 60s and 70s, even the villains, are something that stick till today and resonate with everyone. Needless to say, once this issue came out, the way this character made its impact on everyone till today, it is just so legendary that they just had to give him his own issue, and he's the best superhero of all time. So you can see here these ads are there from the original issue, and you have here Spider-Man. So actually there's another story about how initially there was no hyphen, but then later Stanley added this hyphen here, because then people would be confused if there was no hyphen, because it's very similar to Superman. So to differentiate it from Superman, they gave it a Spider-Man with the hyphen. So as you can see here, all this is the enhanced color grading that they've done in this reprint. In the original, it's just a plain yellow over here. And we see Peter Parker over here. I really miss these title cards where the narration used to happen either by the author or by the character. This narrating that goes on, because today all these boxes are just with the character's mind voice that's going on, but this narrating bit I really miss it. As you can see here, yeah, the first appearance of Uncle Ben and Aunt May, Flash Thompson, And the thing about Peter Parker, as you can see here, he's very relatable to the youth, because as a teenager, he's just a geek. He loves his books, he loves his science, and he obviously, like any teenager kid, he also wants to have a love life, have a good social life, but he is shunned by his peers because of his his deep interest for his particular subjects, and that always made him feel like an outcast. And I guess that's something that a lot of teenagers can relate to even today. And you can see here Peter Parker now experiencing his new powers firsthand, and going to this wrestling match over here. This wrestling match, I think, was done so well in the Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 1 movie. I can just imagine Tobey Maguire saying, "Did your husband give it to you?" in this panel. And here we can see that he's got a contact from a showbiz man, and now he's sewing his own costume for the first time, making web shooters. And here comes the Spider-Man. Some more ads, and this is part 2. Now all of this is color enhanced. I don't think this blue was here before, and even the spider was initially blue in the Amazing Fantasy 15 original copy. See, the guy who he let escape, which leads to a series of events that changes Spidey's life forever. And he's growing popular in the showbiz, and ultimately he gets the bad news that Uncle Ben is shot dead. You can see he tracks down the killer, only for him to find out it was the guy he let escape before. And actually, the Spider-Man used to have his eyes pop out here, which was kind of comical, but this was the early 60s, guys, so there's a lot of things that they were still experimenting back then, which obviously did not catch later on, but I guess that's fine. Then we see Peter Parker walking away, giving the bird to Spider-Man, that with great power comes great responsibility, one of the most famous quotes of all time. Let's have some more ads. And these are extra stories which I did not know were there. I've actually not seen these before, because in every other this thing or book I have seen, it's just the Amazing Fantasy 15, and then they just jump to the Amazing Spider-Man issue 1. The bell ringer. Guys, it's kind of funny how for 12 cents you had 3 to 4 different stories going on over here. So much content for 12 cents, and today we pay like what, some $4 to $5 per issue, and then it's just 22 pages with 2 or 3 ads in between, and most of it is like to be continued. Man in the mummy case. I miss the simplistic style of drawing, and I also miss the simplicity of stories that used to be there in these old comics. Yes, we had new villains and new situations, but it was also fairly simple. There would be a villain with an agenda for the day, and he would either win, or very rarely it would be a 2 continued. But over time, it's just gotten so complex that you need to read 10 issues to get hold of one plot. And sometimes it's good, but I don't like that that's the case with almost every issue that you see. Yeah, this was the editor announcement that Amazing Fantasy would be stopped, I think, after this issue. There are Martians among us. UFOs. Some more hats. Bodybuilding was all the rage back then, as you can see here. And we have the final issue over here. And that was the video, guys. That was the full review of Marvel Milestone Edition Amazing Fantasy issue 15. And although this is not the exact facsimile, I'm still glad to have this in hand, because I just wanted a single issue copy of this story, and I'm so glad to have it. So like I said, hopefully one day I hope to get the original issue in my hands someday. Fingers crossed for that. Let me know what you guys thought about this review and about this comic in the comments below, and I will catch you guys next time.